how to stop doing something in general, a non-addict perspective. So we're not going to really mention anything in terms of what I mentioned before, like with PMO or other common things that we have to stop doing, like some things that are bad for us or our health or for our future, whatever. I'm gonna mention this, and in other words, I'm gonna just say this from the square one that I think of that as being like that. By the way, the lights are off because I don't want to show you entirely what's in my room. I also don't want to have to worry about being too creative, because this is creative in itself. Is having the lights off. You can't see me waving my hands as you can, because if you pay attention. Okay. Anyways, but there's a little bit of light, so there you go. Okay. Anyways, there's the idea of having to. There's actually a good example I already knew how to start this video with, but the example is basically one general square one way that you can stop doing something without any other extreme examples. This square one example is focus on something very dead simple. It's like, you see this apple right here. I don't have one. You see this apple right here. Don't not the elephant, pink elephant thing. More like don't eat this apple. And yes, it does illustrate the eat the marshmallow kind of abstraction, but hear me out. Don't eat this apple, or don't look at this apple, don't touch this apple. Okay, how about this? How about don't touch this apple with this orange, or don't touch this apple with this banana. Something simple like that, but still a little abstract. You'll do that, right? You'll perpetually not do that. Because if you don't think about it, then maybe it will work that way. Not the marshmallow analogy, not the pink elephant analogy. More like, it's easy to not do, hopefully, and it's also something you would do, but you don't have to. And it's not supposed to be a can-should paradigm. Hopefully not even then. I've done philosophies about that. I made videos about that before one time. But that's how that example will work. Then move on to something more extreme, a little bit more intense, like in a good way. Like, and once you're ready, or even before you're ready, like try to move from fruits to something more sentimentary, where you're like, okay, I'm not going to run 10,000 miles in 1 second. It sounds impossible. It is literally impossible. I don't even want to have to debate that right now, even if I'm a philosopher anyways. But don't run 10,000 miles in 1 second. And let's say in this example that's impossible. And you also say, well, what if it was possible? Would you still do it? Would you have a reason to do it? And that gives you a way to critically think without having to have an actionable example. But compared to the fruits example, which is actionable as practice, this gives you more problem-solving skill thinking. And then you move on from that to, if you want to, this early on, you move on from that to something that you did want to stop doing. This could be addiction related. This could finally be addiction related. Which would contradict the title of this video, unfortunately. Addiction related, health related, negativity related, anything like that. If you can do that to yourself in a good way, if you can make sure that you're not saying that, oh, it's a perpetual thing. This is the kind of thing I was trying to get to later. It's a perpetual thing that I have to stop doing, and know that there's this sage wisdom that some kid knew about ahead of time the whole time, and they happen to be right for eternity for some reason, whether they knew what they were doing or not. Because that's how sometimes logic can be fun like that. People will know stuff that they shouldn't have to know the entire time, whether they knew what they were doing or not. And there are children who know just exactly what to do. It gets into more of like a starseed philosophy, but I can do that in other videos, where it's like they just happen to know what to do, and they don't feel uncomfortable in every single aspect. But again, starseed philosophy. I keep saying that though. It is quite the thing where they know that something's gonna be eternally true or factual. There's a difference between those two inherently. But for you to not do something in general, even if that also applies to doing other things, like actionably taking steps to doing positive things. This is just an example of not doing something in general, whether it's negative or positive. Not doing something from your own choice or philosophies or wisdoms. If you can do that, from the fruits example, from the mile running example, and from the final and inevitable but good inevitable of, you'll finally compare this to what you were really facing down. Because there's a funny thing with pipe dream fallacy, which I mentioned before, which was the idea that you don't have to be worried about what's not been brought up yet. Or I didn't mention like that before, but it was the idea that you're gonna have to see it that maybe the things that you didn't have to do something about, or you could never, like the idea of do everything but this, but do nothing but always do this. That was what the first definition I gave it the first time a video ago. It shouldn't have to be like that. Basically, if you want to stop doing something, whether it has anything to do with anything specific or not, doesn't have to be punching fallacy. I made up that phrase, by the way. Doesn't have to be any other thing. You just take your time, take baby steps into things that are obviously impossible to do, or at least not something that you should care about, trivially speaking. Because that's why I gave you that fruits example. That's why I gave you that 10,000 mile run in 1 second example. The things that we can't do, the things that we automatically do, and the things that we want to focus on but can't because we're scared, that's a part of life. You have to be someone, to end card, you have to be someone who is willing to face their fears, even if it means having to make disconnections from things that we wish were still in our lives. Disconnection is a very important skill. This is actually one quote I had. Disconnection is a skill, not a curse.